Welcome back. So, um, in the previous weeks, I've been doing a series on burnout. This is actually the third of a 4-part series. And if you haven't listened to the other two, please go back and listen to them. People have been raving about them. So in the first part, I talked about, this series is called Burnout to Balance. And in the first part, I talked about debunking myths. I debunked myths about burnout and help us realize that burnout is not your fault. I defined burnout, talked about debunked some myths about burnout. You want to listen to that. And in the second part, I talked about sources of burnout and creating a new identity that is, I would say, burnout repellent. Again, go listen to the other parts if you are happening upon me for the first time. Now, today I'm going to talk about allies and support systems. What? Yes, I am. Now, what do allies and support systems have to do with burnout? I'm so glad you asked. So, in this society, right, we have this fake idea that there's such a thing as a self-made man, right? We have this fake idea that, I could do it all by myself. They call it rugged individualism. But let me tell you something. Show me a self-made man and I'll show you a liar, right? Nobody gets there on their own. Because let me tell you something. Every millionaire that you see, guess what? Somebody changed their diapers one day. So therefore, they cannot actually call themselves self-made or anything of that nature. Everybody had help along the way and has help along the way. Think about Amazon. If something breaks on a shop floor, Mr. Bezos isn't going to walk down to the shop floor and repair it himself. Exactly. Even he needs help. No man is an island. Think about your life as a doctor in a hospital. You have doctors, you have nurses, we have techs, we have pharmacists, we have medical assistants, we have physician assistants, we have nurse practitioners, we have janitors, we have everybody. We have IT people. Woo, shout out to hospital IT people. We have IT people. So all so that doctors can treat patients. Now, if you take this parallel, right, how about apply it to your own life and look at your own life as a system that needs support? I derogatorily call this attitude what I call middle class. I call it middle class mentality, because a lot of times we think that because we're doctors, like, oh, I've got this, I can do everything by myself, I don't need anyone. But think about if you can't do the thing that you were trained for, which is doctoring. If you can't do that all by yourself, be the doctor, the nurse, the technician, the pharmacist, the IT person, the admin person, if you can't do that by yourself, what makes you think that when you're emotionally exhausted from burnout, mentally exhausted, physically exhausted, what makes you think that you can do it by yourself? What makes you think that all you have to do is hum through some physician wellness programs and burnout will be gone? That is not the case. And now I'm not saying that to say that meditation is not necessary. It absolutely is. It absolutely is. But the fact remains that we're not islands. Okay, we're not islands. We can't do it by ourselves, and we should not even pretend. I don't pretend. It's so funny. People used to ask me when before I retired, like, how do you do all this? How do you do all this by yourself? How do you do so much? And I'm like, I don't do everything. I go to work, I speak, and I write. And I hang out with my kids and my family. What are you talking about? How do I do everything? I don't do everything. I've never pretended to do everything. And it's great that I haven't felt that I have to do everything. And I learned very early to start to rely on my support system to get things done. So now I want you to ask yourself this question. What are you going to do for support? How are you going to I would say support. How are you going to find support? How are you going to find allies? So this third part is called allies and support systems. So now I'm going to talk about relationships, because the truth is that a lot of times we don't realize that the relationships are not always what we think they are. They're not always what we think they are. Sometimes we think somebody is a friend and they're not. Sometimes we think somebody is not a friend and they are. So there are ways for you to assess the relationships in your life and know who is in your corner and who is just in your circle and not actually in your corner. So first and foremost, give me 1 second. Okay, here we go. I'm going to talk about I used to give my clients a relationship assessment tool, and sometimes I'll whip it out if we need it and talk about things like that. But I'm going to talk about qualities of the relationships in our lives, and then I'm going to go into the types of relationships, and you use those two scales to know who is going to be your support system from here on out. Okay, so number one, grade A, I'm going to say, not number one, grade A. We have so this grading system was developed by, I believe, John Maxwell. So it's not my thing. It's not my proprietary thing. Thank you, John Maxwell, for developing this. So grade A, we call them refreshers. They are refreshers. And what do these people do? They inspire your dreams and they energize your talents. So they're called refreshers. They refresh you. So that's like the highest grade of relationship you can possibly have. So what you want to do is make a list of refreshers in your life. And if you don't have any refreshers, because now you're the refresher for everybody, that gives you an answer and a clue to where some of your burnout could be coming from. There's nobody to pour into you. So you're as dry as a bone and you're trying to get by on fumes. And if you don't have a refresher in your life, you need to hire a good coach, a good life coach that can be a refresher in your life. People inspire your dreams and energize your talents are called refreshers. Grade B, these are called refiners by John Maxwell. They sharpen your ideas and clarify your vision. So if you have an idea, they will help you take it to the next level, right? So these are people who you cannot do without. Again, if you look at your life and there is no refresher, you need to hire a coach, because if you are burnt out or heading towards burnout and you have no refiners, no refreshers, that's almost like you have no support system and you're standing on a shaky foundation, and your burnout will only be 20 times worse. Okay? Now, grade C, we call these, John Maxwell calls these reflectors. They match and they mirror your energy. They don't subtract from you and they don't necessarily add to you. Now, reflectors are good because these are the people who are probably, they're like probably be in the same boat as you, right? But they can only do too much. So if all of you are burnt out together, where is the help going to come from, right? So if all your reflectors are in the same place you are, you need someone who can pull you up. So, but again, reflectors don't necessarily add or subtract, but at the very least, they can be in your life to remind you that you're not crazy. So know who your reflectors are. Make a list of them. Grade D, which is now D grade. Now we're going to the bad grades, right? We call those reducers. John Maxwell calls those reducers. They try to reduce your vision and efforts to their comfort zone. And let me tell you something. The more reducers you have in your life, the more you will find you're like a grounded airplane. You will never be able to fly because these people cannot see you as going any higher or any further than where you are. So imagine you're sitting there saying, I feel some type of way. I'm burnt out. I'm tired. I'm stressed. And they're like, oh, it comes with the territory. Because they've reduced, or you start to think of how, you want to do this and that so you can get, pursue certain goals, maybe create multiple streams of income. Maybe, I'm a doctor, I'm burnt. I don't want to be burnt out anymore. But there are some people who, they can't see further than that. It's like, so they try to reduce your vision to their comfort zone. So now when you listen to people talk, you want to be able to see if they are a reducer or not. So people would say things like, well, that's just the way it is, because they can't see anything further. But imagine you come up with this idea and maybe they ask you critical questions. They ask you to think, this is actually a good idea. Think about it. Aha, now you're onto something, right? But when someone constantly reduces your vision and your efforts to their comfort zone, they are a reducer. Now, last but not the least, grade E, these are called rejectors by John Maxwell. And this is literally the worst category of people to have in your life. And I have seen people where these are the only people they're surrounded with. No wonder they burnt out, right? It can be mentally exhausting to be surrounded by rejectors. Actually, it is. As somebody who has had rejectors They obviously didn't start off as rejectors. As someone who's had rejectors in her life, look, it's just meant, it adds to burnout because it's mentally exhausting to have people. These people, they deny your talent, hinder your efforts, and impede your vision. So as far as they're concerned, you are nothing. It's like, what's wrong with you? So anytime you want to see something different for yourself, it's just like people that say things like, who are you to do this? Or who are you to think you can do that? Those people are rejectors. And let me tell you something. If these are the people that are in your life and you're surrounded with, look, honey, run. Because nothing good can come from a rejecter. Okay? Leave them be. Now, sometimes like, well, I don't want to cut people off. I don't want to, but this is your life. Burnout kills. Burnout kills. So are you going to sacrifice your life to please people that you don't want to cut off? Or are you going to do what you need to do for you in order to live a better life mentally, physically, emotionally, etc.? Now, if the rejecter is your spouse, you need to figure out a way so that their energy doesn't seep into your spirit. Or if they're a parent or a sibling, someone you live with, someone you're constantly in close proximity with, that's even why you need refiners and refreshers, so that they can fill up your emotional tank, help you fill up your emotional tank. So when these drainers come along, you have a buffer. Does that make sense? I always say, does that make sense? Oh my goodness. I'm resorting to my default speech. Today I used the Yoruba word when I was speaking to an American. I said wahala. Wahala means trouble, in case you don't know. So I digress. Anyway, as I was saying, these are great. So go through your friend list and see who are the refiners, refreshers, reflectors, reducers, or rejectors. Now, we're going to talk about types of relationships. And this, I'm going to run through this because they're pretty much well defined. So we have mentors. So I always say this, not everybody you know is a friend. Some people think in terms of, oh, if I know somebody, they're my friend. Actually, that's not the case. To be a friend, a person has to have passed a test. That way, you don't get disappointed when somebody you elevated to friend status doesn't meet up to the status you put them in, because they were never a friend to begin with. And it's okay. Everybody doesn't have to be your friend, nor can they, right? So we're talking about quality of relationship. Number one, we have mentors. So we all know what mentors are, right? You look up to them for advice, general or specific. You have a relationship with them. They may be a friend or they may not be. Proteges. Now, they look up to you for advice. They may be a friend. They may not be. Right? So because you have someone as a mentor or a protege, they may be your friend or they may not be. And again, some of these lines cross each other and some things are not that clearly well defined. But it's good to know who is who in your life. Right? It's good to know who is who. I have a good friend, Dr. Salami. Dr. Ruka Salam, if you're listening to this, I'm mentioning your name. She says this a lot. She said, when you call people your friends, be sure you know what they're calling you. There you go. So, we have mentors. That's number one. We have proteges. Then we have colleagues. Again, colleagues may be friends or they may not be. The fact that you work with someone every day doesn't make them your friend. The relationships usually revolve around work or business, so colleagues, business partners. And, no matter how friendly, I would, don't misconstrue a collegial relationship for friendship necessarily, right? And a lot of business and relationships tend to be quite formal and typically separate from your personal life. Again, they may or may not be. Some people actually cross lines, right? But again, it's good to have that knowledge of, okay, this person, they're a colleague. They're not necessarily a friend. I remember once, a friend of mine, an actual friend, this is also a friend who's a protege. There you go. She was telling me about how she gave some advice to a colleague. And the next thing she knew, because, she came upon the colleague at a rough time in their life. The next thing she knew, this person was trying to meet up with her and call her and talk to her and tell about all her problems. And she was like, she was sort of blindsided, because now what happened was this colleague misconstrued her friendliness for friendship. And now it's like, I feel awkward because this person is trying to call me, and I just helped her out. We're not friends, we're just colleagues. So that you don't find yourself in those types of situations, know who is who in your life. The next group is acquaintances. So they're usually outside of your immediate friend circle. And people talk about acquaintances as if acquaintances are bad. Actually, acquaintances are very good for you, because they're usually in other groups. They're different kinds of relationships. For example, let's say you want to go to a different career from medicine. You're probably going to need an acquaintance to do it, right? Because they can introduce you to people outside of your circle. And they're usually they have less depth than friendship. But everybody cannot be everything to everyone. It's great to have acquaintances. You should have acquaintances. And acquaintances are not fake friends. They're not friendship light. They're acquaintances. They're in their own category. Okay? So having acquaintances is great. And you may not know them as well as you know friends. And that's okay too. And they may not know you just as well. Now, friendship is the last but not the least. With a friendship, there's a mutual high level of investment in the relationship. The relationship, you invest time, energy, and sometimes resources into your friendships, right? So there's a mutual high level of investment, especially time. These days, somebody could buy an acquaintance, it's an expensive gift, but your friend, you'll spend time, you'll talk to them, and all that good stuff. There's a mutual high level of honesty. If you can't be honest with somebody, maybe you're not their friend, or they're not your friend. Okay, well, I can't tell my friends, are they really your friends though? Are they though? Are they really? Maybe they're acquaintances, and that's okay, right? So there's a mutual high level of honesty with your friends. Your friends tend to support you through trials. Also are happy for you when you are doing well. So genuine friends, right? Now, they also they accept your flaws, but they're not blind to your flaws. So you see, because they're like, well, this is my friend, so there it is. So what you want to do is get your 10 closest relationships, assess the relationship from grade A to E, whether they're refresher, refiner, reducer, refresher, refiner, reflector, reducer, or rejector. And you want to assess the relationship according to the grades A to E, and then you want to categorize them, whether they're a mentor or protege, an acquaintance, a colleague, or a friend. And now with that in mind, you now have an idea of who your support systems are, who they can be, and all that wonderful and great stuff. Who are your allies? Okay. Now, finally, here's the thing. Not everybody will fall into a neat category, but that's okay, right? This is just a guide. It doesn't mean you should run around checking to see who is who. But here's the truth. Reducers and rejectors will drain you of your energy. And if you're trying to recover from burnout, this is the last thing you need around you. Okay? Now, the people left, who can you rely on for emotional support? Who can you rely on for? What type of support can you rely on certain people for? I have friends who, when I'm happy and I'm jumping up and down, I call them first. Not that I don't call them, because my friends, the people who I deem close to me, are happy for my success. But there are some people that I call first. And just like if I was, to fall down and break my leg, there will be somebody else that I'm going to call first. You see? So you may have friends that are more spa lady type, and some friends are more firefighter type. And it's okay, right? But they should be that mutual high level of trust, mutual high level of honesty, and who are you, who invests in you. And when you realize what your closest relationships are, you invest in them accordingly, according to the type of relationship it is. And like I said, not everybody falls into a neat little box, and that's okay. That's okay. So, the next thing to realize, so we've talked about relationships. Look at your life and see places where you're getting drained and figure out a way to hire help for those things. It's amazing how a lot of physicians, especially women physicians, I'm going to say that, they come home from work and they go straight into a second shift, which is, children, dinner, cooking, laundry, yada, yada, yada. I'm like, honey, look, it's better for you to have peace of mind than to have a 401k that's bursting at the seams. Yes, I said it. Because you can lose your 401k tomorrow. And I'm not saying don't be savvy and don't save for the future. I have 401k. So, hey, so I'm putting that out there. Everything, you can just live by the seat of your pants and from hand to mouth. Absolutely not, honey. But think about what hiring even one or two people to take up certain burdens and what kind of quality of life you can have from that. I remember once was having this conversation with sort of a Facebook group type thing, and people were talking about how many loads of laundry do you do? And I'm like, y'all's a bunch of doctors, right? Loads of laundry. And we were talking about doing 6 loads of laundry at the weekend. I said, so you guys do laundry? I outsource my laundry. And I was like, okay, am I like the crazy person here who's marching? Everybody's marching to the beat of a drum and I'm marching to a flute. Like, it just made sense. It just made sense for me not to sit down and have to do load after load of laundry and then fold all this laundry, right? Doing this mind-numbing task that's going to take me a whole day when I could be doing, podcasting and adding value to people and signing on new clients. And, and what I pay to outsource laundry takes care of so many things. My peace of mind, I'm not spending my whole weekend or whatever doing laundry. I'm actually resting. I'm relaxing. I'm hanging out with my family. I'm planning for the future. I'm developing programs. I have my mental space for myself. Now, maybe for you is not laundry. But as a doctor, sit back and have this. Remember what I talked about in the last episode, about having a CEO mentality. What has to be done? What do CEOs do? They hire people. They fire people. They promote and they demote. Maybe instead of buying things, you can buy some help. Again, my one-on-one clients, this is what I do with them. We actually go through budgets and we talk and I want to put on the light over here. We talk and we go through budgets. It's like, okay, how does this happen? How do I make this happen so my quality of life gets better? And so this is kind of, obviously this is a podcast, it's cookie cutter. So I'm not trying to put my mouth in your finances, but if you do want to work with me, actually you can click on the link. Whether you're watching this on YouTube, it's going on YouTube and my Anchor podcast. Click on the link and book a call with me, and then you can gain some clarity and see if you want to work with me going further, and then we can go from there. So these are the things I help my clients with to get a better quality of life, not to burn out. So you can practice for as long as you want or as little as you want. Dear doctor, the life you want is out here waiting for you. And it's not a burnt out life. You have options. So next episode, I'm going to be talking about, before I go, who are you going to hire? Ask yourself, who can you hire to take the load off? So next episode, I'm going to be talking about new options, new life, and sharing some final thoughts on burnout. If you like this, click the link, give me a call. I'd love to have a chat with you. So next time, I'm going to be talking about new options in your life, like I said. And that will be the final part in this series on burnout called Burnout to Balance. See you next time.